So Super Rugby Round 5 is almost done. The Saturday games saw a pretty mixed bag of really high class, high quality action and yeah, a bit of less exciting footy. So let's start with the Highlanders win over the Crusaders. So they finished up with an 8-point victory, 25-17. If you haven't seen this match, it's probably a good one to watch back, especially the first half. The first half was really just what Super Rugby is all about. It was helter-skelter, it was back and forward. I mean, 3 tries is not... There's been more tries scored in a half of Super Rugby than 3 tries. But it was just so fast, and the Highlanders didn't miss a tackle in the whole first half. So it was really top quality stuff. Yeah, just really good to watch. The ref also I thought was pretty good in that he hurried things along. Like sometimes guys milk like a break in the action or take too long for things. Guys who are injured but not involved in the next play, they wait for them to get back up and get the magic spray on the leg or whatever. Nah, he was just like, come on, let's go, let's move on. Come on, if he's not in the play, he's out of the way. Let's keep going. So that also helped. I mean, he let a lot of stuff go. Like the turnovers were pretty crazy, but yeah, at least it was fast. So that was good. The second half wasn't as clinical. It was a bit more kind of scrappy. There were a few more errors in the game. It was still fast, but there were like line-out errors, there were scrum errors, still a lot of turnovers at the breakdown. So yeah, I mean, in the game itself, Ben Smith was really impressive. He kind of led the team from the back, and Dixon, when he came on, had a really good game. For the Crusaders, you know, Bridge showed some really good gas when he got a try. And to be fair, they lost, but to lose by only 8 points when they've got as many guys out as they do is it's a bit scary for the latter half of the season once the Crusaders have got some of their big names back. So I mean, they travelled to Dunedin to play an unbeaten team who was pretty, you know, had most of their big guns playing, and they still only lost by 8 points. So it's definitely not all doom and gloom, despite the fact that the Crusaders have kind of 2 losses on the trot, which is more losses than they had all last season. It's really rare that the Crusaders lose, let alone 2 in a row. So definitely not all doom and gloom from them, but really good on the Highlanders for winning this one. It was always predicted to be a tight game, and the Highlanders had I think 3 losses in a row against the Crusaders before this one. So really good on them to win it. I think for the most part they looked like the team who were going to win it, but you know, 8-point difference is still a pretty tight contest for the whole 80. So yeah, the Highlanders' undefeated run goes on, but they face kind of a bigger test now going forward because they actually have to leave Dunedin. They can't just stay home for the whole season. So they got a first away game and they travel to Wellington to play the Hurricanes, who also looked pretty sharp last week. And the Hurricanes will certainly be a lot more well rested having had the bye. For the Crusaders, yeah, like I said, 2 in a row. That's pretty rare for them, so they'll be definitely wanting to bounce back and put a bit of pain on the Bulls, who will be travelling down to Christchurch from Hamilton. At least the Bulls are in New Zealand, so it should make a bit of a closer game, but the Crusaders look pretty deadly at home, and they'll be hurting from this loss. So yeah, really good game to watch. It was really impressive. Yeah, just a good game for Super Rugby all round, that one. The next one, the Brumbies and the Sharks. So I watched this one live. Also, I mean, I obviously watched the first one live. It was scrappy. It was definitely, like, after you watch that game, to go and watch this game was, I mean, it was still a good game to watch, but it just wasn't quite there in terms of the quality of the game. It was scrappy. Neither team really got going. And I wrote a note when I was watching, just like, holy penalties, Batman, because this game had 27 penalties, which is more than any game has had this season. So it was, yeah, just stop start, no cohesion, just yeah. The Brumbies had a pretty dominant scrum, which was kind of good after they'd been bossed around a bit by the Reds in the previous game. The Sharks scrum has been kind of mediocre at best this season, so they definitely need to still show some improvement. Missing the Beast, obviously, so he's a big loss for them. Lineouts were messy, so yeah, this is what I mean by the whole game just being scrappy. The Brumbies did have 2 yellow cards, but in that whole 20 minutes of play, the Sharks were only able to put on 7 points. So I think that's probably a key point for the game. If a team's down for a man for that long, you need to be taking advantage of it. Like the Rebels did the other week. I think it was against the Brumbies. They put on like 3 tries in 5 minutes. So yeah, the Sharks just really unable to get any go forward. They just got the 1 try. The game even got a bit nasty at the end. There was a bit of ill feeling, kind of a bit of handbag stuff. Not quite biffo, but the guys weren't happy. And I mean, that was just the nature of the game. Like I said, it was scrappy. It was penalty driven. So yeah, it just wasn't a happy camp for the guys in the game. The Brumbies had to resort to the boot a bit. So yeah, they did score a couple of tries. Spate again is their man. He loves playing against the Sharks because apparently he scored in his now last 3 games against the Sharks, so that's 3 in a row. But Hawera, who'd come in at 10, has probably put Leali'afano out of job in the 10 jersey. I think he'll be struggling to get back that jersey because he kicked quite a few penalties, a few of them from like 50 plus meters, so really impressive. I didn't realize his boot was quite that big. So yeah, definitely important for them. But I mean, it just shows you how, I guess, lacking the Brumbies are a bit in terms of getting over the chalk. So, still 2 tries. It's not a huge amount, but lots of penalties kicked. So they might be turning to that in future games. If you've got a guy who can kick from 50 metres, might as well utilise them, especially if you're struggling with kind of your lineouts and getting tries. Got to get the points somehow. The Sharks were able to even up the stats after being kind of under pressure for the start of the game. But like I said, it never really got fluid for them. Esterhazen went off after 47 minutes, so that was not ideal because he's one of their key players. Arm was quiet compared to recent weeks. Faenga did well for the Brumbies. The young hooker, it was only his, I think, 2nd or 3rd Super Rugby game, so he did well, played most of the game. Hawera, as I said, had a really good boot. Bosch showed a bit of flair towards the end to get a really good try, and Rob Dupree kicked a pretty sweet conversion to actually make it interesting for the last few minutes. But yeah, the Sharks just weren't able to even it up. So it was a pretty desperately needed win for the Brumbies because they'd been coming off some poor form away from home. So they go into a bye now, having a win under their belts, which is good. It kind of will help their camp. A bit of positive vibes going forward. For the Sharks, it's disappointing, but I guess a bonus point on the road. You wanted a win, especially as the Brumbies going into this game, as I said, were kind of looked to be in a bit of trouble, but they couldn't capitalise on it. And yeah, just take the bonus point. So not the worst result it could have been, but not ideal. So they go on to play the Rebels away, who look to be tougher. So the Sharks will definitely need to show a bit of improvement. In the 3rd game, didn't watch this one live, but it was on at 6:15 in the morning here, so I didn't have to really worry about not checking my phone or anything because I just got straight out of bed and turned the TV on to watch this game. So the Stormers down the Blues 37-20 in Cape Town. The first half was pretty much just all the Stormers. You really could have been forgiven for thinking the Blues weren't even on the field because their jerseys looked so similar that you couldn't tell them apart, and it was just all Stormers playing anyway, so the Blues might as well not have even been there. I really don't know how they got away with wearing such similar jerseys. I guess it's just stupid design from the Blues that both of their jerseys, the home and away jerseys, are a form of blue. So maybe next season pick another colour because yeah, that wasn't easy kind of viewing. It did get a bit easier as the game got on. As the guys got a bit sweaty, the jerseys kind of changed a bit of colour, but still, yeah, it was really peculiar. 24-3 at half-time kind of shows you the dominance that the Stormers had. Willemse was just running the show for the Stormers. Viljoen got a couple of good tries during the game. and the Blues just weren't in it. But at halftime, whatever Tana Umaga said to the guys must have done something good, because they did. They did come out firing. They got a try early on in the second half, and when it was 24-8, it really looked like the momentum had shifted. It was still early second half. The Stormers were starting to look a bit off the pace, just a little bit slower than they had been in the first half, and they had just travelled back from New Zealand. So Blues obviously have still been in South Africa since their game against the Lions and preparing for that. So they've been in South Africa for a while, so fully adjusted. And it looked like another comeback might be on. But the Stormers got an intercept try, and then from that point on, they managed the game really well. They still didn't look as energized as they did in the first half, but I mean, they'd already got a big lead, so they didn't need to. They played smart, and they just kind of managed, like I said, managed the game really well. And Willemse kicked his goals, looked really class the whole game. Perifetta made the Blues look a bit better in the second half. Gatland kind of won't look back on this game as one to remember, so he got subbed at half-time. Stormers much needed win, back on track after a really poor tour of Australia and New Zealand, and with the Sharks losing, it kind of gives them a chance to kind of push on. For the Blues, it's just the up and down thing, isn't it? Like, you lose when you're at home against a Chiefs team just full of injuries, and then you get a delayed flight to South Africa and beat the best team in the South African Conference, last year's finalist. And then when you're playing a team which is full of injuries, just coming back from New Zealand, and half the team's got the flu, and you just lose. So the Blues, just, inconsistency, kind of maddening. But yeah, I mean, still, it was an entertaining game. Tries for both the Ioane brothers. Rule got a try, Duvanaka got a try. It was still a good game to watch, and yeah, very, very good for the Stormers. Stormers play the Reds next at home in Cape Town next week. The Blues go into a bye, so it's not ideal going into the bye after having a loss, but if you're going to travel back from South Africa, you might as well have a bye to kind of get your time, jet lag all out the way. So yeah, still a good game. In the fourth game of the round, so this one I did not see. I've only seen the highlights, and I'm kind of wishing I'd maybe watched this one instead of that one. But yeah, so the Lions pip the Sunwolves 40-38. Who would have picked that? Pretty much nobody. I think you would have made a few dollars if you'd bet on that scoreline. Yeah, so they only scored one more try than the Sunwolves, which was really surprising. I mean, the Sunwolves have always been able to score a few tries, but generally leak a lot. The Lions leaked a lot as well, so they definitely need to do something about their defence after surrendering a few tries against the Blues last week and now the Sunwolves this week. A championship-winning team probably needs to beat the Sunwolves by more than 2 points at home, even if you're rotating players out. And I know they had a lot of their top guys kind of resting for next week's game. Yeah, is this the game of the round? Maybe, just in terms of how close it ended up being. So from what I've seen, the Lions looked to be pretty dominant early on. I mean, they didn't score any really early points. The Sunwolves took an early lead with a penalty, but then they got a try, and then they just monstered the Sunwolves scrum like from 5 meters out and ended up scoring. So it was a tight hit and then a try. So the Lions are up 14-3 after about 20 minutes, and you're thinking, yeah, it's about right. It's about time that the Lions just kind of kick into gear. Sunwolves start to get a bit tired, and yeah, the Lions are going to run away with it, but it just never happened. So it was 19-17 at halftime, and even then you'd be thinking, yeah, sure, but the Sunwolves guys are going to get tired. They're playing extra hard because they're up against a really strong team, and they're playing their hearts out, and it's still going to blow out in the last 20. But no, the Sunwolves on 60 minutes were leading 31-26, and but obviously Malcolm Marx was just like, nah, we're not having that, because he took control, scored one of his 2 tries, a pretty mean try. So that put them up 33-31. But still, game wasn't over by that point. It was still kind of tit for tat. Sunwolves scored a try right in the 79th minute to get the bonus point from some pretty poor Lions play. So, I mean, this will give the Sunwolves some confidence for their game next week, because they were predicted by all and sundry just to get absolutely hammered, and they've only lost by 2 points. So really good on them. A lot of soft tries. Like, I don't think I've seen so many tries where it's just they kicked the ball and someone either went straight through and just grabbed it, or was kind of tackle and then they bobbled out and then just grabbed it. It was, yeah, poor. Some really poor tries, like schoolboy stuff from some of these. I mean, I don't know if the Lions, you guys will have to tell me who watched the game live. Were they just being a bit kind of foot not on the gas? Was it a bit slack? It seemed it from the bits that I have seen. At full time, the Lions guys looked dejected. Like, even though they'd won the game, they were hands on hips, not looking happy. Some Wolves guys didn't look over the moon because you just lost, and they had a chance to win it. But they definitely looked the happier of the two, and fair enough as well. Both teams had really poor tackle rates, kind of in the 60% margin, so that's really weak. But yeah, the Lions take the win. They need to show some better decision making, more composure, because that was poor, really poor. They got the Jaguares away in Argentina, where they've traditionally sent a weak team and got beaten. So they played their weak team this week. One would think they're going to send a pretty strong team to Argentina and try and pick up a win. Jaguares are a conference rival, so you'd want to beat them for sure. Some Wolves definitely take confidence, having got a bonus point in Johannesburg. But they still need a win. They got the Chiefs at home in Japan, so it's not an easy game. But yeah, Chiefs still got a lot of guys out, so the Bulls push them. Maybe the Sunwolves can do the same. We will see. And final game of the round, the Jaguares go down to the Reds at home. So Reds win at 18-7. I really wanted to turn this game off. It was terrible. Painful game to watch. I mean, I guess if you're a Reds fan, it was pretty sweet to get a win, but it was not easy viewing. Yeah, sucking my will to live is the note that I've written on this game. So it was kind of a game of two halves in terms of possession and territory. The Reds were really dominant in the first half. The Jaguares kind of brought it back in the second. But neither side looked deadly in attack. I mean, they both scored one nice try. Delgi scored a good try. Dalgunu scored a good try. The try to Paenga Mosa was just a real buffed up maul try, so a real Brad Thorne style try. I mean, but those were the exceptions, not the rule for this game. It was pretty poor from both sides on attack. The Reds continue to just suffocate teams on defense. So if there's one thing you take out of this game, is that the Reds, I mean, that first game was an exception against the Rebels, that they're a good defensive outfit. And Brad Thorne mentioned in one of his press conferences, like UFC, in terms of just toughness. But if you've ever watched a bit of UFC, you know, some fighters like to really knock guys out with some blistering strikes, and some guys like to get on the ground and wrestle. And when you're watching the game, the wrestling guys are often not that entertaining to watch unless you're really into all the different moves they do on the ground. The Reds are that team. They're not that fun to watch, but still the stuff that they do is impressive in its own way. But they're not going to blast you away with flair, not at the moment anyway. They still need to work on some of their stuff. But yeah, it's still effective. It still gets a win. So it's not a criticism. It's just a different way of winning. The Jaguares were just pretty poor at everything this game. Their line out, they lost a lot of their own line out. Their scrum was under pressure. There were patches where it was solid. But yeah, and the main one was just the knock-ons. The handling errors were terrible. It was really painful to watch. I looked up all the other games just to see how this compares with them. So the game from Friday night, the Chiefs-Bulls, 13 knock-ons. This game 13, this game 13, this game 13. Or was it 14? No, that's 14. The Lions Sunwolves increased the knock-ons with 17, right? So the average is, 14, maybe 15 knock-ons. The Jaguares themselves had 16. The Reds had 10. 26 knock-ons for the whole game. It was atrocious. It was really painful viewing. But yeah, I guess, I don't know if I want to say both teams were really good on defense or both teams were just kind of poor on attack and made the other team look good. So yeah, it wasn't a pretty game to watch. I guess at least for the Jaguares, you didn't get any yellow cards. But I mean, they scored in the 7th minute and then didn't score any points for the rest of the game. So yeah, pretty painful. The Reds, good D, gritty win. But yeah, so not ideal for both of them. They'll definitely need to show a bit of effort next week. So yeah, Jaguares and Reds both with South African teams to play next week. So we'll see how they go. Yeah, what did you guys think? I'm especially curious to know how this game went because, as I said, I haven't seen that much of it. Was this game as bad as I've made it out to be? I don't know. What did you think of the Blues? What do you think of the Stormers, man? They impressed just with the kind of vulnerable situation they were in, but they didn't look at during the game itself. Brumbies, Sharks. Were you impressed by the Brumbies? Are they now not just the Brumbies team? Are they improving? And yeah, do you think the Highlanders can keep going? How long can they keep this unbeaten run going? We will see. Still one game to go. We've got the Waratahs Rebels tonight, so I'll look forward to that one. But until then, I will talk to you guys again next time.